Continuing our series of future 49ers prospect scouting reports for the 2024 NFL draft and a pair of wide receivers today that might be potential replacements for Brandon Aiyuk and or Deebo Samuel. Coming at you right now.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Crocky209. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We love the everydayers, and we love it when you subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Make sure you hit the notification on YouTube as well so you know when we do a live episode, which we still like to do a couple times a week as we did during the season, even though there's no more post-game pods. There's a lot of NFL draft to talk about. Free agency happening, maybe some trades on the horizon. And the 49ers are going to have to figure some things out at wide receiver long-term. And with wide receiver long-term starts a year early a lot of times with a development path needed. So is this the draft where the 49ers go in and find a replacement for Brandon Aiyuk or Deebo Samuel? We have a couple of candidates here. Two wide receivers, Xavier Legette, wide receiver from South Carolina, Malachi Corley, wide receiver from Western Kentucky, both big body, powerful wide receivers. Are they future San Francisco 49ers? Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. First up, Croc. Let's go to Deebo Samuel's alma mater and find a similarly strong and powerful human being in wide receiver Xavier Legette, 6'1", 221 pounds. He is fast. He ran, Croc. Do you know his 40 time from the combine?
So I didn't know his weight is 6'1", 221. Did not know that. He actually looks taller when you watch his film. I don't know if it's something with the South Carolina uniforms, but he looks taller. I could tell that he obviously had some build to him. Was not expecting 6'1", 221. Was expecting more of 6'3", 212. Either way, big body guy. But I don't know any of his testing numbers.
Everybody's an inch and a half shorter than they look. It happens all the time. You see a player who's like, oh, man, Michael Crabtree, 6'4". Now he's 6'1 and a half. And teams in the NFL are like, okay, you're not as big and imposing as you were in the college level because there's a lot of freak of natures in the NFL when you get to the league. But Xavier Legette is a beast, and he is strong, and he shows that strength. And he shows his 4.39 speed at times on the field as well, Croc, from the NFL scouting combine. Your mouth is agape, Croc. Were you surprised to hear that Xavier Legette ran 4.39 at the combine and threw up a 40-inch vertical? And looking at his scout report, Croc, I'm not surprised that he ran fast because you can see it sometimes when you can see him leap. I'm also not surprised he didn't run the agilities because that's the biggest question I have for Xavier Legette. And my short version, my one word, my one phrase scouting report for Xavier Legette, short DK Metcalf. That's what I saw. That's what I saw, winning on the same type of routes. There's one play in particular, and to me, he's a boomer bust prospect, Croc, and you're better with technique than I am with wide receivers and DBs, and so I can't wait to hear how you break these two guys down because that might be somewhere they both lack a little bit, as route runners. So some projection involved. I think I'm probably, as an evaluator, more okay with projecting that and not seeing the technique. And I know you like the technique a lot more when you're looking at especially DBs and wide receivers. There's a play against Mississippi State that is just ridiculous. If you want to see what his speed is, and I love him on crossers. He's good on comebacks. That's why I called it the short DK, because that DK Metcalf route tree, the X wide receiver route tree. He's an X receiver. There was a crossing route. He caught the ball over the middle of the field and exploded like almost nobody I've seen in this draft process with speed, running, not only just getting through a seam and running the distance for a touchdown, running away from guys like he is an Olympic sprinter and he's playing against guys from the YMCA. It was that ridiculous with that burst that he showed there. And I would like to see it more often, but it's there. He's got burst, especially when he has a runway. But being 6'1", 221 and running 4.39 is all great, but you got to be a football player. What'd you see in Xavier Legette, the football player, wide receiver from South Carolina?
All right, so let's talk about some positives. I think right away, especially when you watch certain games, man, I watched the Georgia game. You want to see him against a good defense. And obviously sometimes it's tough when you want to watch a good receiver against a talented defense because it's also more challenging on the quarterback. So you had Spencer Rattler, and half the game he's running for his life. But I thought he actually made a lot of throws, made a lot of plays. He flashed right away the ability to have really good body control. That was something that jumped out to me kind of early and often in that game, just watching how he's able to kind of contort his body in the air to make either a sideline catch, a vertical pushing catch down the field. And I noted that he can win vertically with body positioning and hands. I think he at times really flashes the ability to be a hands catcher as well. And in that Georgia game, he did a really good job of running it was like a 12-yard stop route, 12-yard curl comeback, and really just pushing vertically to get their corner to open up enough and sit that route down and create that separation at the top. That's where you start to get kind of like the DK Metcalf comparison, because DK, if anybody watched my Ole Miss, he maybe ran 3 routes. It was like stop route, 5-yard stop, 10-yard stop, go route. That was kind of it. And then occasionally a slant or something else. But I thought he did a really good job of being able to steal that vertical and sit that route down. And those are some of the things that you want to see from an outside receiver. Do you have the ability to win vertical, whether it's with speed or body? I think he definitely displayed that. I did not see him display 4.39 speed in the few games that I watched. So what I mean by that is just looking and just being like, oh, this guy's fast. But sometimes with guys like that, it takes a while to see it. DK Metcalf, I was able to watch him against. And it's funny you mentioned Ole Miss. Obviously, DK played at Ole Miss, but I think it was the Kentucky game. DK released off the line of scrimmage, outran a corner while looking back at the quarterback, with the corner looking at his back, and the corner was running as hard as he could to keep up, and the gap just never closed. And that's with DK looking back. And you run faster looking straight ahead than you do looking back. I said this DK Metcalf is going to run in the 4.3s. So it was kind of hard. If you just watch play to play to just see just pure speed by him, it was kind of difficult to see. And maybe with Legette, he's a guy who I have to watch more and just see those instances to know that he can play with this speed. I thought outside of that, he was a big mover. That's one of the first things I noted, where you watch a guy who, can run to a spot, run the areas, but maybe isn't as twitched up, isn't as sudden, isn't as quick. And those are some of the things I like. I think myself and Kyle Shanahan, I think a lot of times we kind of align with that, unless he sees a specific usage for a receiver, like maybe Juwan Jennings. Juwan Jennings was never going to be super quick, twitched up, but he's like, man, I like how he blocks. He gets up to his top speed really fast, which makes him effective in that, line of scrimmage to 15-yard range. I can utilize him like this. Legette, you would hope that if you have to take him in, let's say second round, you can have a little bit more of a guy that's going to be used a lot more, targeted a lot more. As much as 49er fans love Juwan Jennings, he's giving you 26 catches a game. Can Legette be a guy that gives you 70 catches? Or can he be George Pickens, right? A guy who went to the Pittsburgh Steelers and is their, for the most part, wide receiver one, especially now that they traded away Deontay Johnson. So how efficient and effective can Legette be as a guy you have to lean on to make plays? I'm not sure, but he does bring an element to his game that I feel like the 49ers don't have. Again, that pure deep threat guy. I can run by guys with his speed, and then his ability to really contort his body and make contested catches at that contact point. The 49ers don't have. Brandon Aiyuk has gotten a lot better at it, but it's still not this is a really strong point of his. Legette, I think it is.
More on Xavier Legette next. Our grade for him, where we like him, if we like him, for the San Francisco 49ers. Malachi Corley as well gets a lot of comparisons to Deebo Samuel. Could he be a fit for the San Francisco 49ers? And you mentioned the Pittsburgh Steelers and their number one wide receiver. Well, maybe they're going to go trade for Brandon Aiyuk and make him their number one wide receiver, and George Pickens will stay the number 2 guy over there. Let's get into all of those conversations as well to finish up this episode about wide receivers present and future next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney, whether you're betting on a big upset or maybe you're just betting on the one seed. It's time to go dancing on America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins at FanDuel. That's $200 to use on anything you want, including tourney point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. And of course, you can get involved with those NFL draft props, which I love. It's my favorite way to bet all year long at FanDuel. You can too. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon. All right, Xavier Legette, wide receiver, South Carolina, 6'1", 221. Here's my quick scouting report, and it's very similar to what you just talked about, Croc. I mean, he's muscled up. He's an ex-wide receiver. He's got yak ability if given a runway. It's very different kind of yards after catch than the next guy we're going to talk about in Malachi Corley, even though they both can give you some run after catch. I mean, he's killer on those crossing routes, the vertical route tree you mentioned, the nines and the posts and the comebacks, and good contested catch wide receiver and solid. I think he had 2 drops maybe all year, 40-inch vert. You see that. You see him jump up and pull the ball down as a rebounder. He also had a kick return touchdown. So maybe not punt return, but I think both of these guys could give you kick return ability as well in Xavier Legette and Malachi Corley. But tightly wound athlete is Legette. There's a little hitch in his release. He needs to get better off the line of scrimmage to help his entire route tree, whatever route he's asked to run. I would love to see him run more of those, backside digs and stuff. You see the 49ers receivers run a lot. I think he could do it, but you just don't see a lot of it. Not a nuanced route runner at all. And that release I talked about, it seems like DBs can get their hands on him pretty well, and he's powerful and he can kind of run through that, but he definitely needs to get better, I think, off the line of scrimmage. He was a late bloomer as well, only really had 1 year of big-time production and didn't do much his first 2 years in college. All in all, Croc, I see a second-round guy. 49ers take him at 63. I like it. It's probably not a guy that you're really fighting maybe to trade up to get in the second round, but maybe move up a little bit even and get Xavier Legette. I see a solid second-rounder. And if Danny Gray, who's another 4-3 guy, was worth a third-round pick, I think Legette's worth a second-round pick.
I could see that. You're going off of, man, this guy has the body, he has the physicality, and with Danny Gray, I think there were more areas of quickness based on how he just kind of had to win. I think Legette can win in multiple ways, which to me makes him more valuable, during the draft. Now, again, we're talking about more valuable, et cetera, with Danny Gray. Danny Gray was the last pick in the 3rd round, and that's including comp picks. So we're essentially saying he's a day 3 guy. We do, and that's what the 49ers thought of him. That's what the NFL thought of him. I would say that Legette is closer to round 2 or early round 3 as opposed to a comp 3rd round pick like Danny Gray was.
Yeah, the thing you like about Legette is he has some speed, but he shows a few more abilities that are important, and you just need to start adding things that you can do, right? So you can be fast maybe, and maybe you can open it up and run by guys at times. And, it's easy in college when you're faster than everybody and you can catch a crosser in space and take it the distance, right? Or just run a post pattern and not have to, set guys up and really run a nuanced route and go win. But he can win contested catches, and he's got some yak ability. I think those are important to throw in on top of what his profile is 6'1", 221 with a whole lot of speed. So yeah, second round.
Can't lean on it, right? Like we've seen guys like N'Keal Harry. We just talked about it, right? Like just guys with that high contested catch rate. If it's past a certain number, they're like, okay, hold on. This isn't sustainable at the NFL level. Like that's not going to lean to being good. But if you can win in the other way, N'Keal Harry, I felt like had some of the struggles, but didn't have that over the top athleticism that Legette has that can maybe help him be better than a N'Keal Harry who went 1st round.
Boomer bust. Work to do for Xavier Legette if he's going to be a starting caliber wide receiver in the NFL, but certainly has a lot of abilities and prospect I like quite a bit and would be a nice fit potentially for a 2nd round pick to be an ex wide receiver that could potentially replace Brandon Aiyuk, not replace him and his production necessarily. And it might be, year 2 when he's on that level as a starting wide receiver, but some work to do for sure.
I will say, and just being able to kind of compare South Carolina receivers, Brian Edwards. I liked Brian Edwards more, and the NFL had Brian Edwards as like mid-third round pick. So
Yeah.
Brian Edwards to me just showed more twitch, more ability to beat press man consistently, gave you that run after catch consistently. His work at the top of routes, I just thought he was a better prospect, but also did not have the same kind of top end speed, which teams might value more, that could bump up Legette over a guy like Edwards. And maybe why Edwards, not saying you have to have top end speed, but maybe with the way he did win in college, not having that top end speed translate to the NFL maybe hurt him a little bit in his development.
Right. He kind of went the way of N'Keal Harry. And so, which one is Legette going to be? Is he going to develop more? Is he going to be more like DK Metcalf? Is he going to be more like N'Keal Harry and Brian Edwards ended up being? How about Malachi Corley, wide receiver out of Western Kentucky? And I mean, the comp is easy on this one. My short version scouting report is he's the next Deebo, right? Every year is the next Deebo, and he's the next Deebo. 5'11", 215. That's what Deebo Samuel was. Technically, Malachi Corley, a little shorter. 5'10" and 5'8", 215 pounds. Former running back as well. Built like a running back. Shows running back ability with the ball in his hands. Yak. He's a yak bro. And so Kyle Shanahan's going to love Malachi Corley.
When I was looking to see like what number he was, so I know who I'm watching when I put on the film, I did see a picture of him in number 23. So I don't know if early on he was a running back at Western Kentucky and then switched because he had a picture in 23. I couldn't find anything else with him in 23. And then all of the other pictures, he was in number 11 as a receiver. I do like how you said the next Deebo, all that. And again, I did not know how much he weighed or how tall he was watching his film. But I did see the Deebo Samuel comp. But I also noted this. Where is it at? It was along the lines of right here we go. 49ers current Deebo Samuel. So what I meant by that, Deebo Samuel coming out of South Carolina, he was arguably the best receiver in that class, like coming out. Like it wasn't, I think when you watch Deebo now, it's you see how he's utilized in a very specific way. When he was at South Carolina, he was a receiver.
He wasn't a white back yet.
Yeah, and he did some of the white back stuff, but he was a receiver. And he did the receivery things very well. Twitchy at the top of his route, twitchy setting. He had quickness. He could be a good route runner. Like there were all these things I thought he did at a high level, which had me like, I had him at wide receiver too, only because DK Metcalf was so freakish. But my top three receivers there were DK, Deebo, and AJ Brown, right? Like those are my 1, 2, and 3. And it was really 1A, 1B, 1C. I really liked all three of those guys a lot. And then I kind of fell off with my next two guys, Hakeem Butler and
Butler. That's what I was trying to think of. I knew there was one more in there. We both like Hakeem Butler too.
Yeah, we're going to erase those guys out of our memory. But I still had them over guys like Hollywood Brown. I had them over guys like N'Keal Harry, right, who ended, both of those guys went first round. And obviously Deebo, DK, and AJ went later. Deebo coming out of college, you watch him, just the way he was able to run routes, set up things and stuff like that. I don't quite see that consistently to the level of Deebo Samuel as a prospect with Corley. And it's funny, and again, I said in the 49ers current Deebo Samuel, because I feel like each year Deebo is getting further and further away of what he was at South Carolina. Doesn't mean he can't be effective, but he's just getting further away from it. But if you're looking for a player to come to the 49ers and just, hey, we just want you to do everything that Deebo Samuel is doing right now, he is definitely that guy. I put on one game, it was against Middle Tennessee, and literally the first 6 pass plays, he did not run a route. Like it was just like a screen, or I'm going to like stand there, I'm going to flare out, and then they fake it to him and throw it to somebody else. But like he did not run a route. And then the next play that they threw to him and he did run a route, it was like they motioned him across to formation and then threw like a flat route to him where it was clearly just designed to get the ball in his hands because the other receiver was blocking already upfield, and then he dropped it. And that's not to say I saw anything with drops. I did see something with like maybe at times if the catch is a little difficult, like how good are his hands. But when you talk about the next Deebo, The first play, all right, so we're winding the back. The first play of the Middle Tennessee game, they got the ball in his hands, and he just ran through a defender, just boom, blew him back. And I'm looking at his build, I'm looking at his moves and how he runs. And I'm like, this looks like Deebo. But don't get it confused with Deebo Samuel, the prospect.
Yeah. That was the play down the right sideline, like a little wide receiver screen. And then he trucks a guy and then he runs away from everybody else. Is that the play you're talking about?
He did not run away from everybody else on this one. He's picked up a few more yards. So that might be another play I just haven't seen. But why people consider him, and I saw kind of a clip of Steve Smith talking about him like, oh, he's just a yak monster.
Yeah. Yeah, he's fun. He's fun to watch. And like, there's been a lot of next Deebos, but I think Malachi Corley is pretty close. And, Deebo Samuel is so unique, but if the 49ers were thinking about moving off of Deebo, I could absolutely see this being part of the plan and Malachi Corley coming in and being, a guy that needs some development time as far as running routes and running the route tree, but has a lot of that wide back type ability and an absolute legit yak bro Malachi Corley could be. Okay, my full scouting report on Malachi Corley, our grade for him, and let's talk a little bit about Brandon Aiyuk and some of the trade rumors and what that could potentially look like in the NFL draft next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. A lot of us spend our lives wishing we had more time. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and make it a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters to you so you can do more of it. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your specific schedule. You fill out a brief questionnaire, you get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge if maybe you don't hit it off at first, which happens sometimes with therapy. So learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today. Get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Make sure you guys are subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. And we're talking Malachi Corley. We were talking Xavier Legette. I think they're both nice fits for the San Francisco 49ers, potentially. Second round area. When I watch Malachi Corley, for sure, yards after catch. Strong, tough, thick. He will truck you. He shows some athletic ability, some speed as well. I do want to see what his workout numbers are. He didn't run with the combine, which I don't like. I'm fine with what the tape looks like, but competition, Western Kentucky, he wasn't playing the SEC either. So you want to just see that speed and make sure it confirms everything you're seeing on tape with his workout numbers. But one thing I loved about Malachi Corley, which makes me think he might be a little bit of a gem and a little bit of a steal potentially in the draft, is you talked about what kind of prospect he is and how he was used. I think they did him a disservice because it was such gadget usage in college for him. When he was at the Senior Bowl, Croc, he looked good running a full route tree. They just didn't ask him to do it in college. And he was so good on the short stuff. And, these college offenses and college quarterbacks, sometimes you can't be super sophisticated. But I saw a glimpse, and that's a similar profile to what we saw with Deebo Samuel, right? He stood out at the Senior Bowl. Now, the Niners were coaching the Senior Bowl that year, but he looked like a player that was a better route runner than he was asked to be in college. Now, is he there yet? Maybe not, but he's got some developing to do, as all young wide receivers do. But if he came into the 49ers this year and they don't trade away Brandon Aiyuk or Deebo Samuel first, he's always got to be as like a number 4 wide receiver, maybe return some kickoffs and play the Ray McLeod role and develop as a route runner and be used as a gadget player. But I think there might be more there as a route runner. And so that's what got me excited about Malachi Corley. Is you see the tape, you see the yak ability, but then I saw him at the Senior Bowl compete and look like a real wide receiver.
I saw areas where, when you talk about needing to improve, I watched him run a corner route and he just ran right into the DB and then went corner.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, are you not going to give him anything at the top of the route? Are you not going to try to move the corner on his spot? Are you not going to kind of work your stem and then kind of work his leverage or anything like that? I saw him do it one time in the game, but consistently it wasn't something that I saw him do in his bag. I watched him do that on a curl route at the Senior Bowl where he just, again, ran straight into the DB, pushed him down and then turned around and caught the ball. And I'm like, well, can he not move at the top of routes? Like, does he not have that sudden change of direction, sudden quickness? And those are the things, again, we're comparing him to Deebo Samuel. Deebo, you saw that. Like, you just saw him just be light on his feet, make a guy move, just really just destroy guys at the top of the route when he was at the Senior Bowl. And he saw it at times at South Carolina. Not a whole lot of that for Corley. So, that was just something I noted. Gives nothing at the top of routes. Can he make tough catches? Ran a good route versus leverage a couple times, but not as consistent as I would like. They designed the plays to get the ball in his hands a lot. That is more like Deebo Samuel. And then again, can he free himself up enough to not have to rely on like contested catches, or do you have to use him as a gadget guy to get the ball in his hands in space? A lot of like what we see from the 49ers with Deebo Samuel now. So those were things that, again, ability, I see a lot of it, but there's just certain things that worry me with how consistent he could be. Because at the NFL level, we saw Brandon Aiyuk, who's a terrific route runner, who does a lot of these things consistently, working guys, whooping them at the line of scrimmage, working leverage, just get strapped, right? Like in the Super Bowl. And it was just tough. And now you're looking for Kyle Shanahan to help his guy, like free him up. The NFL is just so much harder to be able to play in as much space. And Corley also played a ton in slot as well, where you're getting more, favorable matchups, being able to play out in space. So, unless the 49ers are saying, all right, we're just going to put him in the slot and we're going to just use him a lot, like even if he's on the outside, like what we do with Deebo Samuel, then I'll be like, okay, I could see that vision for him. The other things, I probably would take him closer to the 4th round because I just have no idea.
The Niners are picking at what? Pick 94 in round 3. So you're looking at Corley at pick 94, not pick 63.
Yes, correct.
Okay. But you're okay with Legette at 63?
I like Legette at 63 more than Corley.
Okay. I've got them both in the route about the same spot. I think Legette goes first, just because of the 4.39 and the competition in South Carolina versus Western Kentucky. But I like Malachi Corley, and I wouldn't be shocked at all if neither one of those wide receivers get to the 49ers at pick 63, and I wouldn't be shocked at all if both of them are there at 63, and I wouldn't be shocked if one of them does get to the 49ers in round 3, although that might need a trade up because I like both these guys. Very different wide receivers and good fits. And if you start to look at what the 49ers could possibly do in the draft, and let's say the Pittsburgh Steelers do pony up pick 20 and the 49ers accept it, and the Niners end up with another selection in the NFL draft, I think round 2 might be the sweet spot to draft a wide receiver, because not only these two guys, there's other wide receivers the 49ers could draft, and you could go, say, Amarius Mims at pick 20. You could go Talise Fuaga if he's there. You go offensive tackle at pick 20 that might not be there for you at 31. Then at 31, maybe Kool-Aid, who ran a 4.47 at his pro day today.
With the Jones fracture, with the fracture in his foot.
See, here's I don't know if Kool-Aid, because that was like his fastest time, because the report from Tom Pelissero, as high as he ran as fast as 4.47. So one scout had 4.47, showed that to the agent, and another scout's got him at 4.51, 4.52, whatever it is. And is he going to run slower without the Jones fracture? He wouldn't run if he couldn't run good, right? So I don't know. The Jones fracture thing, I don't know if we should add, should subtract. He's fast enough. He checked the box, 34.5-inch vertical, fine. Not
34.5?
Yeah.
Not very explosive.
Right. So it's 34.5 is a crazy vertical for a normal human being, right? Like
for us, like as a defensive back, you would like to see closer to like 37 and up. And then if you're talking about like the explosive athletes,
yeah,
they're hitting 40, right? And I'm not saying I said 40, but you would just like see it like minimum. Remember, we're talking about thresholds, whether it's with the arm length of offensive linemen, and all that, or cornerbacks, right? Like the arm length, you want 32. He definitely hits that threshold. But vertical, you would like to see 36 and up. Now, there's some guys that jump 40, whatever. That's amazing. You're a terrific athlete. But you just want to see a different kind of just explosiveness, and all this kind of just shows you what type of athlete you're getting.
You could go wide receiver at 31, maybe one of the Texas boys. You go Xavier Worthy in the 4.2 speed. You go Adonai Mitchell. Maybe you go Kool-Aid. Maybe you go corner. Maybe you double up with offensive lineman there, and then you go wide receiver in the 2nd round. Maybe you move up for a wide receiver in round 2, utilizing one of those extra 4th round picks, and it might be more difficult to do that in the first round. So interesting scenarios the 49ers might have if they do move off of a wide receiver, but it's going to be tough to replace Deebo and Aiyuk. You don't just replace those guys, and usually it takes a little while. And Malachi Corley and Xavier Legette would be, probably big-time contributors year 2, 3, more so than year 1 if they were drafted by the San Francisco 49ers. But good prospects. I like both of them. I'd be happy with Legette or Corley in round 2.
I think the 49ers, prior to Anquan Bolden, having like multiple 1,000-yard seasons, I think the 49ers had 1,000-yard receiver going all the way back to Terrell Owens in like 2003. So between like 2003 and I think maybe Michael Crabtree, there were like no 1,000-yard receivers. And now we're talking about replacing 2 guys who have been all pro in the last few years, like 1,400-yard receivers. So definitely we've seen, history shows it's not as easy to replace that type of production. But, when the money starts happening and you see what's happening with Cincinnati, you got 2 terrific receivers there with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. How much do you pay these guys? And then you also have George Kittle, who's one of the higher paid tight ends in the league. And then you have Christian McCaffrey, highest paid running back in the league. It's like there's only so much amount of money, and you have to figure out a way to be able to retool while not having a drastic fall off, kind of like what we've seen from Kansas City Chiefs. And they've had to work through some things. But you got Kelsey, okay, he's making a bunch of money. We can't continue to pay Tyreek Hill what he wants or what he'll demand. Okay, we got to get rid of you. Okay, Rashee Rice, please be good. And then you saw him come along the second half of the season. 49ers probably looking to kind of replicate that type of situation.
Thanks, everybody, for being with us every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. We're going to continue our series of future 49ers scouting reports on players the Niners could take in the first round, second round, and beyond of the NFL draft. Getting close to really stacking that big board as well. Croc and I back tomorrow right here, Locked On 49ers.